So we have some space. So those who would like to come forward, please feel free to do so. We have one chair here, so if you want support for your back, don't feel shy. Because there's not many of us, it can be quite intimate. So please ask questions freely. Don't feel shy to ask questions or even challenge, because that's how you learn. I learned in England that there's no such thing as a stupid question. The stupid question is the one you don't ask. Maybe you have the same saying here, I don't know. So today's an interesting topic, divine person or cosmic blur. I've been getting into a lot of discussions recently about this topic, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to prepare a class on this. So this topic is a very timeless, deals with a timeless question, one that has intrigued philosophers, mystics, scientists, and seekers from every corner of the world, which is, what is the ultimate nature of reality? Is it impersonal or is it personal? Now, this is not just a theoretical, abstract discussion. You just read on your armchair. You read it like a book and you just put it away. It's actually that's something that really affects us. It affects how we go about our lives and how we relate to others, and also in terms of what is our purpose. So the implication is, if the ultimate reality is impersonal, I'll explain these terms in a bit, then our relations are temporary illusions. So if everything is impersonal, then our relationships are illusion, love is chemical, and the longing of the heart is a mistake. But if the ultimate truth, the absolute truth, is personal, then love is eternal, relationships are real, and the purpose of life is not dissolution, but connection. So, generally this presentation can be done over 3 sessions. I've kind of over-prepared it, as I usually do. So I'll kind of summarize it a little bit. If I jump some sections and you're confused, please feel free to ask. So let's define terminology. Right. What do we mean by impersonal or personal? Who would like to have a go? So when I mean, what does impersonal mean? Like, we say that a lot, like people are impersonal. So we have some idea. Would anyone like to?
Lacking feelings.
Lacking feelings, okay. What else? Yes.
Like insensitive to our personal needs, uncaring.
That's a good one. Ash?
Devoid of a certain level of connection.
Devoid of a certain. I heard from one devotee academic. He said, because I'm from England, so I said, America's. I find it a little bit impersonal here, and he said America is rugged individualism. It's very egocentric. Culture here, based on how the country came about. So it's very different from Europe, it's very normal to stop someone in Europe and have a conversation with them if you're asking for directions. I guess you can do that here as well, depending on how you approach them. So, but what does personal mean? When you see someone's personal? Jim? Someone said you're personal.
To care about others.
To care about others?
To have exchange.
Oh, that's good. Did you have your hand up?
Yes. You're an individual entity. You have a body, you have a face, you're personal.
Okay.
Relate to people.
Very good. Very good. Sometimes we say when we get offended, people say to us, don't take it personally, Well, obviously we're going to take it personally, because we're a person. Yeah. Anything else? No? Okay. All right, let's define. All right, I've kept it very simple. So when we talk about impersonal, in terms of this presentation, we're talking about the absolute truth. God is a formless energy, field or void, and consciousness is temporary or illusory. Personal view. God is a conscious being. We are meant to have a loving relationship with that being. So this is now you may think, well, how does it relate to me? But it very much relates to you, because how we go about our life is influenced by these 2 viewpoints. We either subscribe to one unconsciously or the other consciously. So if we understand what is the ultimate reality, then we can shape our life in such a way. So now this is not a topic that's just exclusive to people from India or people who follow the Vedic tradition. It's actually something that was debated by many people over the years. So and they didn't debate as an abstract intellectual exercise. It was actually something they really cared about, It's like, when you're moving home, you have a debate with your partner, your spouse, your children, your family, why we should move there. It's very deep. It's very connected to you. So over the years, we've had many great sages. Now, originally, this philosophy of impersonalism originates in the Vedic literature. and basically great sages would debate this. Actually, even to this day, you go to certain parts of India, these great scholars will come together. I mean, they don't look like that, obviously. That's a few thousand years ago. But they would come together. These are highly intellectual people, and they would debate, is the ultimate reality personal or impersonal? Does God have a form or does he not have a form? These ideas later on influenced Greek culture. I was just speaking to my wife about it because she's from Greek, and she was giving me the lowdown. So, Plato, I think we've heard of Plato. He wrote a famous book, Plato's Republic. He envisioned the form of the good, but it was in a very impersonal way. He thought of it as pure abstraction. Aristotle, who is considered the father of Western philosophy, he basically proposed a first cause or an unmoved mover. It's more of a concept than an actual person. Then later on, Buddhism had an idea of impersonal idea. And later, there were some Christian, Islamic, and Judaism philosophers who also discussed this. Now, if you look at originally the Abrahamic literatures, there is an idea of a personality, of a personal God. But then later on, it became kind of abstract because they talk about how God is personal. He has feelings. He gets angry. He intervenes in society. It infers that God is personal. When I mean personal, I don't mean kind. I mean he actually is a person. Now, there was during Europe, if you studied Europe, there was this period called the Enlightenment, and there was a new form of understanding of God came about. It was called deism. So deism is basically where they think of God as a clockmaker. He makes the world and he just backs away and he doesn't interact anymore. So this idea was very prominent in that time. And that rose to other things. Then you had scientific naturalism. And eventually we came to what is now the New Age. So, people talk about, they call it pseudo-pop or spiritual pop. And I'll discuss that. So this idea has been debated over many years. Even to this day in other cultures, they debate this topic. Is God absolute truth? Is there a form? Does he have a form? Is he personal or is he impersonal? I was thinking of a good way to explain this. I think I'm presuming most of us have seen the film The Matrix. So in the third part where the guy, Keanu Reeves, he dies, he's speaking to this artificial intelligence and it takes on, it's like this, it's made up of all these different things. And when it speaks, it takes on the face of something. So that is kind of the idea what people, when they think of impersonalism, that it doesn't have a form and it can take on, or it can take on other forms. So before I move on, does anyone have a question at this point? Everyone on the same page? Okay. Right, so let's look at some of the, let's look at a little bit more impersonal throughout history. There's a trajectory. So it starts with this. See, the thing is, in India, there was always there's personalistic and impersonalistic philosophy has always existed in the Vedas. But there was one interesting impersonal philosophy that came about 1,000 years ago called Advaita Vedanta. And that was taught by a great teacher called Shankara Acharya. And basically what he taught was that this world isn't really real. It's all an illusion. Identity is not real. What you think, what you experience, what you possess is not real. Actually, everything is illusion. The real identity is this formless energy called Brahman in the spiritual, in the sky. We're meant to go to that place, merge with it, and lose our individuality. So this concept of I, me, mine is all illusion. So what's yours is mine. What's mine is yours. But I'm pretty sure nobody really applies that philosophy in real life, So if I said, give me your bank account details, who's gonna do that, It's not practical. Right. So then, Greek Stoics, I can never pronounce this word properly. If my wife was here, she'd get angry with me. But, they believed in this thing called logos. Has anyone studied Greek philosophy here? So do you want to explain Greek Stoicism? This aspect? Are you?
Well, I can just say what is the meaning of logos.
Yes, go for it.
It means order.
Order.
There is.
And does it mean, when they talk about, do they talk about in terms of an impersonal order or a personal order?
Well, they don't specify so much.
They don't specify, okay.
Order generally means there is someone who is keeping the order.
Keeping the order, okay. Right, so these philosophers, they were highly intellectual. Actually, if you study Greek, they say the Greek civilization is kind of like the basis of Western civilization. In fact, the early Christianity, they took their philosophy from the Greek philosophers. It was considered quite hip. They were like the hippies of the day, they were like hip, It was very intellectual, very, like people go to Williamsburg, all the cool young people, it's very alternative. So that's what these Greeks were like. They were highly into philosophy. They were into debating, and civil like this, they were into technology, everything, Like I go there quite often with my wife, and it's like you can still see remnants of that culture. So anyway, so they basically taught people to control or suppress their emotions and not depend on love or personal connection to God. For them, being peaceful meant being detached. Now, being detached is quite hard, Like, imagine someone insults you, and they say, "Be detached. Don't be affected." It's quite hard. So this is what is their philosophy. Right. The next one, Enlightenment Europe. I already explained about. They say yes, there was a God. He made the clock, and he went off somewhere, and did his own thing. So people kind of lost the idea of a God who listens, guides, or cares, and as a result, many people stopped worshipping or praying to God, and religion seemed to be very cold and unnecessary. And if I'm correct, these people who did practice this idea of deism, they actually came to America, where they were persecuted in Europe by the Catholic Church. So there's a lot of remnants of that here. So then you had modern science. The modern science basically said there's no soul. You're just chemicals and brain activity. Love is just a chemical reaction, There's no meaning, there's no higher purpose. There's no objective reality, objective anything. Everything is chance. So what did this lead to? It led to people being isolated, anxious, and unsure of what life is really about. Now today we have the new age, where like people generally talk about the universe, they talk about the energy instead of God. They may say, I've heard people say the universe has my back, or they say go speed, whatever. So the universe isn't a person. It doesn't listen. It doesn't love. But while the language sounds spiritual, it doesn't offer real connection. It doesn't offer devotion, and it doesn't offer guidance. So over time, we've slowly pushed away the idea of a loving personal God. But what have we lost? We've lost a sense of deep relationship, of being known and loved, or having a purpose beyond ourselves. And it's happened gradually over the years, So now this brings us to a vital question. Why has this impersonalism idea become so dominant in the modern age? You can feel free to ask any question anytime. So when people think of meditation, they think of that. Has anyone done meditation here? No? I tried it once. My uncle was telling me that if you meditate, you see a bright light. So I remember I was doing it for ages. Like I'd wake up 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd go to my temple room, because every Indian family has a temple room in their house. So I went and I was trying, and I remember my eyes started to hurt, and then I started to get a headache. This is when I was about 16. So then my uncle said, "You're meant to see a bright light." And I said, "I didn't see any light. I just got a headache." So then I was at a program once, like a Krishna conscious program. And I was saying, well, meditation means to see a bright light. So then we were like sitting on the floor, and there was this lamp next to my friend, and he shined the light in my face. So, "Do you see a bright light now?" I said, "Yes." He said, "So what's the difference?" There's no difference. If you think about it, it's bright light in your face. So anyway, he kind of defeated me. So he said meditation is not about seeing this bright light or anything. It's something much more deeper. So let's make it a bit interactive. So why do people accept this idea? Hare Krishna, welcome. Why do people accept this idea of impersonalism? What's so fancy about it? Yes.
I think it's just like the frame of reference.
Yep.
Because what we can see in this material world is everything
Hmm.
decline and ultimately dissolve
Mm.
and collapse.
Yes.
So we assume God is something that's not that.
Yes.
But most people are ignorant about spiritual form and spiritual everything that is the origin of
Yes.
whatever we have here, including the form.
Mm.
And so therefore people naturally come to the conclusion God has no form, because God is eternal, doesn't
Yes.
decline. But that's because of ignorance to the very confidential aspect of spiritual realm.
Oh, that's very deep. Would anyone like to try? Nityananda Prabhu?
I think it's like someone who had a bad relationship with their dad.
Oh, yes,
Like,
yes.
so if you're presented a very kind of harsh kind of terrorist that you have to accept, otherwise you're going to be tortured. I'd rather just accept something not personal.
Yeah, that's very good. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is similar to what they both said. Like, just this world is so painful
Mm.
that it's like the instinct is to push everything away and to like renounce
Mm.
negate like the forms that will eventually decay and cause us so much suffering.
That's a very good point. Yes.
I think it goes back to the Bhagavad Gita when it's written that life is full of pain and suffering, but life is also temporary.
Mm.
It comes back full circle.
So you're saying the verse Dukhalaya Mashasvatam, the material world is full of suffering, everything is temporary. So the material world this world is not meant to be Disneyland. It's not utopia. There is suffering because you're gonna suffer the results of your karma. Every step is a danger. You can walk and awkwardly fall. I mean, there's so many potholes on the pavements. You can easily get injured. Yes, at the back. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think because you don't know, there's a lot of unknown.
Yes.
So because you don't know the unknown, you just accept there's something else, and you accept it.
So could you explain? I kind of got it 50%. So
Like you don't have all the answers.
yes,
But you think someone else has the answers.
someone else has the answers.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's the reason you accept that someone else knows the answers, and you accept the impersonal.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so feel free to put your hand out. You can speak. So I kind of narrowed it down to 4. Obviously, there's much more, but I kind of thought these were 4 key, and some of them have already been said. So past trauma, philosophical bias, colonial. I can never pronounce this word properly. Misreadings and escaping suffering. I think you were talking about that. And right. So what is past trauma? We've had a bad experience in our life, emotional, spiritual, religiously. We were part of a religion or organized religion, and our leaders let us down. We lost. Sometimes we say, there's a saying, why do bad things happen to good people? And people lose their faith. Like I heard after World War II, a lot of people left religion. In Europe at the time, because it was Catholic religion, a lot of people left the church. So because if you're a God conscious person, you're doing your deeds. Why are you suffering? Why are you experiencing such pain? So philosophical bias. Now, since ancient times, people, especially in India and Greece, tradition, the intellect was trained to prefer the abstract, the unknown, because it's much more. I'm trying to think of it in terms of Hare Krishna, welcome. Yeah, so that it's much more much more. As one scholar says, it was much more because Greek philosophy was quite sexy at the time. That's what this academic said. I don't know how, but it was. Abstract from emotion, individuality was seen as inferior or temporary. So the idea of merging into this formless absolute was considered the pinnacle or spirituality of success. So some felt that if God had a form, he must be limited. I have a form. My form is limited. I experience pain. I can only see so. My senses are limited. I remember I had a headache when I was in India. No headache. Sorry. When I first went to India, I remember drinking from this store, and I didn't do my research properly, and I got this drink, and he wasn't washing it properly. It was some the Indian way of washing, and I remember I got this sore throat. And I remember I had this really painful sore throat for 4 days, and I was bedridden, and I didn't know where to go to find a pharmacy, because it was my first time in India. I'm talking about 30 years ago, and I feel like, I want to go back to England. This place is really backwards, and I remember feeling like I'm gonna die, and my grandmother was chastising me and saying, "What the hell? Everyone gets a sore throat. You're the first person, and then you get there's something called a deli belly. I'll leave your imagination to think what that is. So I was dying, so just a small inconvenience, and then it completely affects our focus, our purpose. So this the body is limited. The body is full of it's designed to give you pain and limited pleasure. Colonial misreadings. Who wants to have a go on this? What does that mean? Colonial misreadings. What does that mean?
Something with the invasion from Britain and
Great Britain.
the Central Asian Mughal Empire.
Yeah. So some of you may not know. So in India before after it was you could say freed from the Mughal Empire, which was similar to the Ottomans. There was Indian philosophy was very popular in Europe, especially in Germany, and so then the Britain they took over India as a company. There was something called the East India Company. They were actually a multinational corporation. So then they did something which upset the locals because the soldiers were all Indian. So then the British government took over. So then Queen Victoria was like the Empress of India. So then what they wanted to preach Christianity. So they sent over, because at that time Europe was quite united. There wasn't this division like it was, during World War II. So Germany had the best Sanskrit scholars. They were because they loved Sanskrit. So they paid this guy called Max Muller. And he was like a genius Sanskritist, highly intelligent. And they asked him, translate these books and basically translate in such a way that it degenerates the scriptures. And when he was doing that, he came across, because Sanskrit is a very fluid language, you have to study under certain rules and regulations, otherwise you can misinterpret it. And he found the impersonal idea was very prominent, so he just translated it all in an impersonal way, and saying, while doing that, he was saying this is mythology. So then generations of scholars, even people of India, they started reading these books, and they came to the idea these books are not just mythology, but they just teach impersonal philosophy. That's what it is. And the irony was, this guy, Max Muller, never went to India. He never met a Brahmana. He never met someone from the Vedic tradition. He was a practicing Christian from Germany, and he was good at Sanskrit. And the effect of what he did was, like, you could say, catastrophic. So now when people read Vedic literature, 9 out of 10 you're reading his translations. And he had an agenda. He was paid, he was commissioned to basically degenerate, to make Indian philosophy look backwards. Now, if you go to any bookshop in India, you go to the religious section, you'll see Christianity, you'll see Judaism, you see Buddhism, you probably see Scientology as well. But you go to the mythology section, what are you going to see there? You're going to see Bhagavad Gita, Vedic literature. Now, how crazy is that, And they're using the translation of someone who was openly antagonistic. So anyway, this idea of impersonalism was very much from this person. Escaping suffering, I think you said that. So when we're suffering, when we've experienced great pain, we tend to reject everything. We say life is just it's painful. So let's just we're not real. This world isn't real. Let's just merge and disappear. It's much more satisfying to the heart. It gives us some sort of closure, So let me just anything to do with people, anything to do with this world, anything to do with feelings is painful. I just want to shut myself off. Like you hear of these people go to the caves. And they just meditate, and they don't mix with people. It's a bit like that. So impersonal idea was so attractive to the mind, because due to 4 of these reasons. There are more reasons, but these are the 4 prominent reasons. So what were the cultural consequences? I would say social and other things. Well, so when something, when you adopt a philosophy, it's not like something you read and you forget. It's not like you watch a film like I don't know, the Avengers or something, and you forget about it. It's not like that. It actually shapes your worldview. It shapes how you go about it in the world. Ethics becomes subjective, right? So it's like, if there's no supreme person to define what's right and wrong, morality is just basically personal opinion, personal preference. If I'm stealing, who are you to tell me I'm wrong? What's your objective standard to say I'm wrong? What's your criteria? You have no criteria, okay? Because there's no such thing as absolute morality or ethics, right? So there's no divine person to align with who explains us that this is the way. We see that if the individual, if the universe is like, if we're meant to, if this universe is just like this cold, impersonal machine, how can you really love someone and know someone? How can you? It's like you're floating in space, randomly. You're unseen, you're disconnected. But when you know there is a supreme person, you realize you're not alone. There is someone out there. He's always there, watching, guiding, waiting to reciprocate. But if you don't have that, it's quite a lonely world if you think about it. Emotions are seen as weakness. I talked about the Greek philosophy. In impersonal systems, emotion is considered a defect, something to suppress. But love is, it's labeled as an attachment, and joy is seen as an illusion. So in the personal path, which I'm going to discuss, emotions are the bridge to true spirituality, to true personalism. They're not rejected, they're purified and elevated. And consumerism, I think we've all experienced that, when some people are sad, it used to be a female thing, but I see males doing that as well. They would basically go shopping, Like I remember this guy in college, and I don't know, he broke up with his girlfriend, and he was really upset, so we all tried to cheer him up. And he said, I want to cheer myself up. I'm going to go down Oxford Street. Oxford Street is like your Fifth Avenue in England. I'm just going to spend money. So he went to Selfridges, then we took him to Knightsbridge, and he spent like £1,000, which, if you equate it to now, it's probably about $4,000-$5,000, and he bought all the designer clothes. And then the funny thing was, he bought those clothes, he wore them, and he still felt sad, you know. And then one year he put on weight, he couldn't wear them anymore, so it was like kind of pointless, you know. Like, what's that? Some say something?
Now he's broke, so he's gonna really be.
Yeah. You know, like, yeah. I remember like people. Like, I don't know. I mean, now like I've seen here, like I've seen people who are quite poor. They're not from a high, rich background, and you see them wearing $200-$300 Jordan shoes. You know, like that was like even in England we don't really do that. Oh, I'm glad I'm making you stretch. Okay, right. So and love is reduced to chemicals. You know, love is a big thing, right? If everything's impersonal, and this is just like a mechanistic system we're in, love is just hormones. It's not real. You know, neuroscience, what does it say? It says, it's dopamine, it's serotonin, and God knows how many synonyms of that, you know? But then they'll say, but we know these things are not love. Because when we love someone, we experience it. When we lose a family member who passes away, we feel that pain. It's not like it's not chemicals, it's something real. We know that, right? So real love involves choice, involves sacrifice, vulnerability, all things only persons can do. A machine can't do that. So only personalism can explain the beauty and depth of love. So while impersonalism may sound peaceful in theory, it's quite hollow. It hollows our culture. It hollows our lifestyle. It disconnects us from the absolute truth, the supreme person, and from each other, even from ourselves. And that's why returning to a personal understanding of the divine is not just spiritually better, it's culturally urgent. Does anyone have a question at this point? No? Okay, moving on swiftly. So let's look. So, before I carry, let's go, I'll say that in a bit. So what does impersonalism get wrong? So just look at this not just from, look at it from a logical and philosophical perspective, right? So we looked at the reasons why people accept impersonalism, right? Because it sounds intellectually safe. It avoids religious conflict. It sounds inclusive, and it feels non-threatening, right? But when we actually test it against the realities of human experience and reasoning, it collapses. So, for example, how does an impersonal force explain love? That's actually the biggest argument. So, so put your hand up if you've ever fallen in love with a chemical or scientific equation. Whoever put up a picture of E equals MC squared and and wrote poetry, and just expressed deep feeling, who's ever fell in love with that? Nobody. Who falls in love with chemicals in the laboratory? Yeah, because who do people fall in love with? They fall in love with people, not with impersonal stuff. Imagine, right? You're getting to know someone, and you're speaking to them on the phone. You haven't seen them yet, and so your experience is very limited. You can experience aspects of their personality on the phone, but if you see them in person, then you get a bigger picture. You see what they look like. You see their facial expression. You can also read their vibe. And then that's a much more comprehensive and complete picture. That is much more satisfying than speaking to something you don't know. Like I remember when I was like 8, in the 80s, I had a pen pal. This is before email and everything. And I remember I didn't know what the guy looked like, and I was quite excited to have a pen pal. And I remember they did a school trip to my school. We met him, and I was so excited to meet him. I was thinking, this is a guy I've been writing to. We've been sharing, our experiences, our goals, ambition, and I'm meeting him. I was so excited to meet him. And I was thinking, this is it's so exciting to meet people, to be around people, Yes.
Just a little twist to looking at chemical reactions, look at equations,
Yeah.
One time I received a message.
Yes.
Look at the creation.
Yes.
With the eyes of the Creator.
Okay, that's a good point.
So it's mystic beyond everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's beauty everywhere.
Okay.
It's so looking with the eyes of the Creator,
Mm-hmm.
you really feel in love with creation.
Mm-hmm. The material world is there's a lot of beauty in this world. 100%. We agree with that too. Yes, that's fine. So you had your hand up, Bash?
Yes, I do. As part of my self-care, use essential oils.
Okay.
I'm very picky with the quality of essential oils that I use, so that I can, use them also orally. So select finally what oils I'm going to be using.
Yes.
And I love them.
Okay.
Now, am I throwing myself over the floor because, oh my God, I love my essential oils. I have a little altar for them. No, but I carry them on my pocket always because I know that they have beautiful, physiological impacts on me.
Yes, 100%.
Are super beneficial.
100%.
I love life,
Yes.
but there is, I was going to use this word.
Yeah, go.
There is a lot of, let me use this word. There's a lot of craziness to my perception, where sometimes I'm like, oh, that was really cool, but at the same time, it's dangerous, and
Yes.
it can be also toxic for as amazing as it actually looks.
Hmm.
And on the long run, X, Y, and Z may actually set an onset of what I call bad examples, which can get normalized.
Hmm.
There we go. Wow, awesome, but it might not be the healthiest thing, and it's part of life.
Hmm.
It's part of the creator.
Hmm.
Just kind of speaking a little bit to the point that you kind of were sharing. So,
Hmm.
so
Very nice.
what do we really define as love? It's usually my question. How do you swim in that love?
I'm gonna come to that. It's a good question. Thank you. Yeah.
Very quickly, I hear in Krishna fellowship, I see so much care and devotion for creation.
Yes.
Food that we serve here, it's just like I haven't seen this level of appreciation of the relationship with creation in any other where. So much. How devotees.
Well, imagine there's many ways to explain this. Imagine, you give a gift to someone, right? That gift is a medium to express your love. The gift is not love, it's a medium, right? And when you give it, your consciousness is going with that. I'm going to talk about consciousness in a bit, but it goes with that gift. So when that person receives the gift, that person is receiving your love. It's not the gift, because you can say happy birthday to someone, and that person will be totally satisfied, right? And because it's the consciousness. And if let's say, for example, someone gives you something to look after, it doesn't belong to you, but you're going to look after it. Why? Because that person gave it to you for whatever reason. So you respect it. You make sure it's well looked after. You put it in a safe place so it's not damaged, because you appreciate the person. So there is an element of love there, like cooking, right? When we have family and friends coming over, when we're cooking, our consciousness is going into that food. We're thinking, I really like this person. I really want to impress them. So don't think there's no consciousness. There is a transfer of consciousness. Now compare that to getting something from the deli. I think that's what you call it, deli. We have a different term in England, but deli, or going to a restaurant. They don't cook out for love for you. That's why they say homemade food is the best. It's like when your mother cooks food for you, it's amazing. Why? Because it's cooked with love. So in the same way, in Krishna consciousness, when we do something, we treat everything as a property of God. So we treat it with respect. We treat it with devotion. It's not as we have the idea that this doesn't belong to us. This is a gift from God, and we're going to fully utilize it. Like this phone, right? I'm not very good with technology, but I make sure I look after the phone because it's a way for me to go about my life and also to engage that in spirituality. So I'm thinking of the Supreme Person, Krishna. So that's my way of showing devotion to him. And also how you act around people, showing respect, kindness, Yes.
You were mentioning earlier about the individualism of Western culture.
American culture?
Yeah. Western culture.
No, Europe's not like that.
So there's anthropocentrism, like what affects me is important. So
yeah.
maybe I don't pollute the river because how it affects me.
Yes.
But actually anthropomorphism, I don't pollute the river because she's a goddess. She's
Yes.
actually a person.
Yeah.
And it's not about whether it affects me, it's whether how she in this interaction. So
Yes.
although that seems like rudimentary for Western mindset. Oh, the river's a person, the ocean there's a personality behind the ocean.
Yeah.
Actually that outlook creates a more homogenized, not homogenized, but more proper interaction with Mother Nature.
Yeah, if you analyze, like in the Vedic literature, which has also been corroborated, if everything in creation, we may not be able to see it has a form. It's not like nothing. Try to conceive of something that has no qualities, has no form. It's impossible. You may not be able to see it. Like waves, we can't see waves. We can't see air, but we can experience it in a different way. Everything has form. Now, taking it to the next level, that there's a personality, etc. Yes, it is 100% correct. But if we have to see nature as a gift from God, you know, how you look after it, how you treat it and stuff. Like, you know, like I saw something actually when I was in India. Like, I mean, not just India, but it happens everywhere. Like you buy something from the shop and you just throw, instead of, like, there's a trash can right in front of you, but do you use it? No, you just throw it on the streets. You know, thinking someone else is going to pick up from you. You don't really appreciate nature. We don't see, like, you know, by doing that, it's a chain reaction. You know. Because people are going to see that, they're going to do the same. They're going to think, you know, he's doing it, why can't I do it, you know? So then it creates this whole consciousness of mistreating things. Not just mistreating the nature, but also mistreating other people's property, and eventually doing it the same to yourself, you know? So therefore, you know, we have to have this idea that, you know, like, what we have doesn't belong to us. We're just looking after it. We should see ourselves as, you know, like when you get something, when you lease something, you look after it. You know, you make sure it's in good order when you give it back. So it's a bit like that. So an impersonal force cannot explain love. You know, who's like, no one's ever fallen in love with energy. I hope not. You know, have you ever tried telling a joke to yourself? It's a bit hard, you know, like you can't do it. You're not going to, but if you tell a joke to someone, it's much better. The experience is better, you know, like when you may say it to yourself, you'll be like, yeah, that doesn't sound funny. But you say it to someone, you get a better dynamic, you know. I mean, sometimes, like, I do sometimes think of jokes myself, you know, like, and I think, no, it doesn't sound funny. But when I say it to my wife or my friends, then they get it, you know. And so love, if love is real and the deepest part of human experience, it must have a personal origin, all right? Second one, you know, how does energy explain meaning, choice, or justice? You know, if energy is neutral, right? Fire you can manipulate fire to warm you or to burn you. Electricity can run a hospital. It can run a fridge freezer. But as humans, we speak of it. We speak of it as right and wrong, just, you know, and justice and injustice, purpose and freedom. We don't treat these as illusions. We live by them. We die for them. You know. So if reality is just energy, where do meaning and you know, there's an academic word, I'm trying to think of it now, but anyway, it will come to me. Morality come from. Why do we cry at injustice or rejoice at it? At goodness, if our origin is impersonal, so it's coming from somewhere. Now, impersonal and personalistic philosophy cannot explain this. It leaves human dignity and conscience as accidental byproducts of blind matter. You know, like science says everything is chemicals, right? So that's not just spiritually empty, it's logically incoherent. We have a desire to live. We have a desire to do so many things. This is not coming from chemicals, you know? You know, and you know, why do persons emerge from a non-personal source? Like, you know, this is the real philosophical problem here, right? Can personality come from something impersonal? Like there's this concept, the laws of cause and effect. In Sanskrit, we call it Sadkaryavad. It means in the effect there has to be some aspect of the cause. You know, you can so if the cause has personality, has form, then we must also have personality and form. You know, otherwise that means, and if we have form and the source doesn't have form, then the source, which is meant to be the absolute truth, is incomplete. It must have what we have and more. Okay, so it's like, you know, trying to get symphony from a static sound or poetry from a blank wall. You know, a cause must contain the features of its effect. That's like a principle of logic. You know, the laws of cause and effect. So because we're conscious, personal beings, the source of us must be personal, not less. It can't be less than us. You know. So this whole idea, if it collapses philosophically, it doesn't make sense. At the end of the day, impersonalism is basically trying to explain everything, including the richest aspects of human experience, with a vague, featureless, no quality idea of oneness. But what we experience is, you know, in reality, we're experiencing duality. We're experiencing relationship, intimacy, emotion. It's not the absence of it. Okay? So let's keep going. Right. Consciousness as a clue. Now, one of the hardest problems in philosophy and science, one philosopher, I think he's Australian, he's got kind of like a British accent, his name is David Chalmers. He says, consciousness is the biggest problem that in science and philosophy. They cannot explain it. Some people have said it comes from the brains. Well, how did the brains become developed as the neurons? You know, it's the hardest problem. They cannot explain it. Physics, biology, they have not got a respectable theory for it. So So modern science can't explain it. Despite all the progress in brain scans, artificial intelligence, neuroscience, there's no consensus in what is consciousness, what it actually is. You can't locate it under a microscope. You can't bump into it, You can't weigh it, but it won't show up in a CAT scan. Because consciousness is not material. It's something else. It's antimatter, right? It's the subject behind all observation, the one asking the questions. Sorry, I meant to see that. So now, when we think of, when we say I'm thinking, I am sad, but who is that I? Who is that I? Would anyone? Hey, bro. Hey, Krishna. Yes, bro.
The I is the person, the soul. You say my hand.
Exactly.
You say I hand, I head.
It's intuitive,
my soul.
yeah.
Consciousness, like Prabhupada says, is a symptom of
Yeah.
the soul.
Imagine, we hear of people losing, parts of their body limbs. They don't say, I've lost eye. I've just lost my. No one says that. I saw this guy the other day in Florida. I was in Florida last week, and I saw this guy. He had, unfortunately, due to whatever incident, he didn't have a leg, so he had this metal leg. He's walking about, just going about his daily business. I'm pretty sure, he doesn't think he's lost aspects of his of who he actually is. He's just lost a leg, but he's still there. The body is still there, So the soul is still there. Sorry. So. So in Srila Prabhupada explains that consciousness is the proof and symptom of a soul. What is the difference between a dead body and a live body? Consciousness. The dead body is when the soul has left the body, right? You can plug it with chemicals. You can give it electric shocks like Frankenstein did. It's not coming alive. I mean, it may jerk, but there's gonna be no consciousness because the soul has left. And there's a saying actually when it says someone has left the building. Who says it? Something has left the building. I don't know, it's a phrase. It's like, I think it's Elvis has left the building or something like that. Anyway, I was about to say that. Anyway, so morality, why do we care about right and wrong? It's chemical reactions. Who cares, If you take that philosophy to its ultimate degree, I mean, that's what Hitler did, right? He was testing this, he was testing this theory. There's no right and wrong. It's like survival of the fittest, So what makes something wrong? Morality doesn't come from atoms, right? It comes from being conscious and having conscious responsibility. When you're responsible, it implies a person who has a moral will, right? A lawgiver. So without that morality, everything is reduced to opinion and social convention, okay? Free will, choice cannot come from programming, Your phone doesn't choose, it reacts, okay? But you and I can make choices. You made a choice to come here today. You can also make a choice whether to have the prasada at the end. If you don't, you can give me the plate. I'll happily eat it, no problem. So we're making choices every day. Like I was just watching the football on Saturday. I don't know if you guys follow football. It's the Champions League, and it was like a shock result. Paris Saint-Germain, they beat Inter Milan 5-0, which was like it's a pretty crazy score. But so the fans afterwards, the Paris Saint-Germain fans, they, instead of celebrating like civilized, peaceful people, you know what they did? They went rioting. They were smashing windows, destroying buildings, even attacking religious places. Now, what kind of free will is that? So, but they made that conscious choice. Now they're going to get punished. But they could have been civilized like they were in 1998 when they won the World Cup, when France won it. They were very civilized. They were happily celebrating. So. So freedom requires a self that is not bound by programming. That's not bound by this body. Again, matter can't account for it. Consciousness can. Who knows what quali is? Has anyone heard of that? Yes.
It's the personal experience of a phenomenon.
Personal experience. So has anyone tried to explain the taste of something to someone who's never experienced it? I was trying to explain the taste of mango to my friend. In England, and he's never tasted mango before. It was pretty hard, It's like he likes apples and pears and bananas, but mango's more like I know Indian people have and from South America and Asia, but yeah, a lot of English people don't like mango. It's because it's not really popular, right? So I was trying to explain to him, and I couldn't do it. It was impossible, imagine you've driven like a really fancy car like a Ferrari and you're trying to explain that to someone who drives, I don't know, a Skoda or a Ford car. It's going to be very difficult, So the feeling of red or the sweetness of being in love, these are called quality. It's the raw textures of conscious experience. Science can, map the brain state, but not the feeling itself, right? Because the feelings belong to the experience. It belongs to you, right? And it is subjective, 100% subjective experience. But that's part of the being soul. So what does this all tell us? This tells us that consciousness is irreducible. It means that it cannot be explained by anything impersonal, which means the source of consciousness, the source of what's coming from us, must be conscious, and not just conscious, but supremely conscious, because we're coming from that, right? Like even if you think about our body, right? Like you may not think it a big thing. Like Prabhupada explains that we also have this quality called achintya shakti. Like our nails grow, right? Our hairs grow, as if you have hair. Like I don't, but hair grows. Like for certain things in your body grow, right? But when the body dies, it stops growing. So what is that that's making that grow? That's the spirit soul. So it's a proper in Krishna consciousness or in Vedic philosophy, we call it achintya shakti, inconceivable potency. So the soul has that, right? So life comes from life, as Prabhupada says, not from matter. Consciousness cannot emerge from dead atoms. The personal cannot emerge from the impersonal. So when someone says, like, the ultimate truth is an impersonal oneness, we can ask them, are you formless? Are you loveless? Are you voiceless? Because if you're not, then perhaps your source isn't either. So consciousness is the first clue, and it points to a person. You can ask a question at any moment. Now, I thought this was a pretty cool image, of explaining how people want to merge into the one undifferentiated Brahman. So in Vedic philosophy, when we talk about that impersonal aspect, where it's people are aspiring to go to, that's called Brahman. Brahman means spiritual energy, right? Now, let's be very honest. No one wakes up in the morning thinking, I just want to disappear today. I just want to merge into a white cloud of nothingness, Or no one says, I wish I could lose my identity forever and become neutral, right? We don't wake up with this because that's not how we're wired, right? We're not designed for merging. We're designed for relationship. We're designed to be around people, So what do we actually want deep down? What do we actually want deep down? What do we think about? What do we crave? Who said peace? Peace? What else? Love. Why love?
It's pleasurable. It's the supreme pleasure.
Okay, pleasurable. Okay, anything else? Connection. Can you have connection by yourself, or do you need a person?
That's a hard one. Can you be connected to yourself or connected to different parts of yourself? I think so, but it's different than being connected with others.
Okay, that's a good point. Anything else? Anyone would like to add? Okay, so let's have a look. So deep down, we all seek to be known. We all want to be people to know us. We want acknowledgement. We want people to hear us. We want attention, right? Imagine going into a room and all your friends and your colleagues are there and they ignore you. It's pretty painful, actually, Like I had that experience once when I was like, they weren't my friends. They were my classmates. They were my class colleagues. I was like 8, and I remember no one talking to me. And I felt like, I felt a bit disturbed. It was the first time I had that experience of not getting attention. Next one, to be loved. Everyone wants to be loved. I don't care who you are, even a dog wants to be loved, right? Even animals want to be loved. We all want to be, it's coming from the soul. We cannot live without love, being loved. It's a very lonely life, imagine nobody loves you, nobody likes you. It's going to be very hard to function, right? And to love back. So you want to be known, you want acknowledgement, you want attention, you want to be loved, and you want to love back. You've got all this experience, you've got all this knowledge, you've got all this wisdom, and you've got all these feelings you want to share, because that's the nature of the soul. The nature of the soul is to have connection with people, with others. It's like when we give a gift to someone, actually, most of the time we're actually quite excited. Why? Because we're giving something that is a way of expressing our love. Like I remember I bought my wife some some clothes recently, and she was taking her time opening it. I was like, can you please open it? I went to a great deal of austerity to get this, and she was taking her time, and I was getting a bit annoyed. But then she opened it and she appreciated it, because I was feeling, obviously I got it for her, but I also wanted that experience, that feeling that comes from me, and I'm sure we've all had that to some degree. So for all these elements to happen, we need another conscious being, not a void. So this image is like this black, I don't know what it's called actually. Is it like anyway? Pawn. That's it. Pawn. That's what you play chess. I'm not really good with chess, but anyway. So it's like it's trying to merge with this red thing, like this homogeneous thing, and become one with it, right? But then there's a problem with that, because we won't. Now, it's not that you're going to be individual. You're going to lose your individuality. Because impersonalism means when you merge with this, you're losing your individuality. There's no you anymore. It's just they. It's just us, right? So relationships need two. Who can have relationship with a fog? Who can have relationship with an energy field? Like you go near the electric grid and try to have energy. Sometimes when it rains, it gives off this electric thing. You're not gonna you can't really relate to it. You can't like, I love you, you love me. It doesn't really work. So like I said about joking, try to joke by yourself. It could be a brilliant joke. It's not gonna work. But when you share it with someone, it's amazing. It can actually be a rubbish joke as well, and it'll work. So relationship means reciprocation, and this is why impersonalism is emotionally and spiritually unsatisfying. Yeah, it does give you peace, 100%. Yeah, but it cannot offer love. Like it can silence the mind, but it cannot fill the heart. So like someone said that Hare Krishna, welcome. Impersonalism is just basically if you want to merge it, it's like the absence of suffering. There is peace, 100%, and there's also a little bit of bliss, but it's not the ultimate bliss. So do you have your hand up? Yes.
Yeah, impersonalism. The void, the energy.
Yes.
That comes from a person, right? That's
Yes.
effulgence.
Yes, effulgence, 100%. I was going to explain it. Yeah.
Is impersonal.
Yes.
Then you have the localized.
Yes.
Then Bhagavan.
Yes. So there's three. So, Sophia, thank you for saying that. So there's three aspects to reality, for the absolute truth, because we don't really use the word God. We use the word absolute truth. It means the supreme person. He has three aspects. His ultimate aspect is his form, but the Bhagavan form. I'm going to talk about this in a bit. The next one is his localized aspect. He pervades everything. He pervades the atoms. And the effulgence of his body is called Brahman. It's just effulgence, right? And people aspire to that. And 100%, there is some bliss there. There is peace there, 100%. But there's no individuality because you're sacrificing your individuality. And after a while, and it's explained in the scriptures that after a while, you'll want to come back down again. Now, it's like, like imagine someone's never had mango, right? And they one day they have some beverage that has something sweet in it. And they're like, this is the best thing ever. There's nothing better than this. He's never had mango. He's never had other fruits, right? So he from his perspective, he thinks this is the highest. But the other person, no, there is something higher. You need to taste it, then you'll experience it. So let's talk about this. This is what This is what I got. This is what Brahman looks like. It's an effulgence. It's peaceful. It's detached. It's silent. But then, if we compare it to the bliss of bhakti, it's emotional. It's relational, and it's sweet. So what is bhakti bliss? Bhakti bliss means it's an exchange. It's vibrant. It's alive. It's not static. It's multi-dimensional. It's not static like Brahman. So bhakti means the process to revive and live in that relationship with the Supreme Person, right? So in the Bhagavatam, in one of our main scriptures, it says that great sages, they aspire for this Brahma Jyoti or the Brahman, right? Because they don't know anything better, right? But when they get there, they desire to leave after a while because there's nothing to do there. You've lost your identity. You become this homogeneous energy, right? And the thing is, because you're the soul, you have a desire to have relationship. You have a desire to connect with people, right? So you can't do that there. So then you come back. Then you realize there's something much higher. So like someone said that Brahman is like retiring to a quiet cabin. Imagine a cabin in the middle of the woodlands. There's no one there. It's just you. There's people who actually I've seen videos of that. So did you have your hand up, Hadai? Oh, so there's people who do that, right? They like to be by themselves. They're like hermits, right? But bhakti is like going home to a family, right? You're going to your home, there's family, your children, your wife, your kids, maybe your friends come over, and you're all having a great time, So Brahman is freedom from noise, it's freedom from suffering. But bhakti is freedom into love, right? Into Krishna's arms, into kirtan, prayer, sacred intimacy. That's a different kind of joy. Brahman doesn't give you joy, it just gives you peace, gives you freedom from suffering. But bhakti, when you practice it, gives you something more. So we have a picture of Krishna here, right? He's hugging someone. So if you see he's got people around him. Why does a personal God make sense? Because only a personal God can love. People are very drawn into this idea of divine energy or cosmic force field, right? Something neutral, universal, impersonal, but it sounds quite elegant, right? It sounds quite sophisticated, but it collapses under basic reasoning. Can energy love you? Well, it's a bit obvious, no. But we don't ask our electric socket to love us, right? We don't light a candle and expect it to guide our soul. I mean, you can look at a candle. I mean, I did it with this deer. I don't know what you call it in English. And I remember looking at it and I started to get a headache. You know, we don't cry in front of gravity. We don't drop a ball and start crying and start getting this ecstatic bliss. No, it doesn't do that. Because energy has no awareness. It has no intention. There's no heart. You can bow to it. You can chant to it, but it will never respond. It has no you and I. It's just it. Now think of a person, right? When you're in pain, a person can listen to you, can embrace you, can offer hope, walk with you. Even if they don't fix your problem, just that presence transforms your experience. Why? Because relationship matters more than information. You know, like there's a saying that a problem shared is a problem halved. I think that's what they say, right? I mean, I know the expression in Hindi, but so when you share your problem, you feel so much better. But you know, like sometimes people say journaling also helps, but when you say to someone, they may not offer you any good advice, but just listening to you, just being there, it's like a trance of negative energy. Now, scale that up to the divine. This is Krishna, he's hugging someone. You know? So, you know, a person can love, he can forgive, guide, interact, I feel kind. So Krishna is that person who can do all those things, you know? Like this story is from, this picture's from from the one scripture called Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and his friend has left the spiritual world. He's come to the material world, and he goes through this adventure going back. He's been away for millions of lifetimes, and when he comes back, Krishna's waiting for him, and Krishna says, "Where have you been? I've been waiting for you for so long," you know. So that means that Krishna desires our association as much as we desire him. We may not know it, like George Harrison said, we may not know it, but we're actually looking for Krishna in his book, the Krishna book. I'm presuming everyone knows who George Harrison is. Yes.
So in Western philosophy, they use the term transcendence and eminence.
Yes.
So eminence is the oneness. You know, eminence means the point of greatness, where to the point where it loses its own separate existence.
Yes.
And transcendence is the opposite, where it's a dualistic, like you going beyond.
Yeah. So transcendence means because transcend means to go beyond, right? So God is beyond, like he lives in the spiritual world, but he also pervades this world by his localized aspect, the Paramatma aspect. So that's his immanence, you know?
And so with love, there's both are necessary. The eminence is like fire can mix with fire.
Yes.
So the one aspect of impersonal philosophy that we accept is the unity between all things. There's a type of unity between all things.
That's right.
So just like water and fire not mixing together, but fire and fire can mix. So a soul can connect to the divine souls, God, because of their same quality, but because they're individuals, they can actually have a relationship. So the transcendence facilitates love because there's individuality and there's relationship and there's exchange. But also the eminence facilitates love because there's a sense of only two things of the same quality can actually unite with each other or have a relationship.
So in Krishna consciousness, the philosophy of the Vedas is called Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. It means there's inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference with God and his energies. So the soul is God's energy. This material world is God's energy. So there is some simultaneously is one and different with God. It doesn't mean we are God. We are similar in quality, like our soul is made from spirit and God is also made from spirit. So we're similar in quality, but we're not the same in quantitatively. And that's why we come from God and we have an eternal relationship with God because we're made of the same substance. But God has this quality to the unlimited degree, whereas ours is very limited. So God is one and different with his energy simultaneously and inconceivably. So I just want to explain why Krishna. You know, it could be like, you know, we see that image of Atlas. He's holding the earth on his. Has anyone seen the picture of Atlas? He's holding the earth on his shoulders. He's struggling. Yeah. Say that again.
Rockefeller Center.
Oh yeah, yes, that's correct. Yeah. That's a good point. And there's always different images of God. So in the Vedic literature, so we in the Krishna consciousness movement, we follow two books, the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. We consider these to be the essence of the Vedas. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is the word of God. Krishna spoke this 5,000 years ago in a place called Kurukshetra, which is north of Delhi. I've been there. You can also go there as well. And Krishna Krishna spoke this to his friend Arjuna. Now, in that dialogue, because it's set before Great War, they discuss not just existential topics, but also Krishna's. One of them is Krishna's identity. So there are 3 verses. There's quite a lot of verses, but so Krishna says in the verse, he establishes very categorically that he is the supreme person. He's beyond the fallible and infallible, and he's celebrated in the Vedas as that supreme person. He also says something very interesting. He says, "I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman." So we've been talking about the impersonal, whatever they call it in Greek. Some people call it logos, some people call it whatever. But in the Vedic literature, we call it Brahman. So Krishna says, Brahman comes from me. It's subordinate to me. It doesn't have a separate independent identity from me. And like Prabhuji said, it's the effulgence of Krishna, right? Now, Krishna also says, he is seated in everyone's heart. So that's the localized form. From him comes forgetfulness, remembrance, and knowledge. By all the Vedas, you are to be known. So if you read the Vedas and you come to a different conclusion, then you miss the point. So indeed, he is a compiler of Vedanta and the knower of the Vedas. So Krishna doesn't, he's not presenting himself as a prophet or a messenger. He speaks as the source of truth. He says, there's not just one truth among many. This is the foundation of all reality. So accepting Krishna as an authority, isn't about force, it's about qualification. And Krishna claims and demonstrates extraordinary qualification. He speaks without hesitation, right? Or speculation. He speaks not as a seeker, but as the absolute truth personified. Arjuna also says in the verse, he says, Arjuna says, you are the supreme Brahman. So we've already said, Krishna says Brahman is subordinate to him, but Arjuna says, you are the supreme Brahman. You are greater than Brahman, And he says, so this is not blind devotion. Arjuna is not acting sentimentally, you're my cousin, you're my friend, I'm just saying it. No, he's saying it because he's realized the truth. So, and he said that all the great spiritual teachers who have meditated on this and realized it, I say this too, you are the supreme person. And why is the Gita, I've explained why is the Gita authoritative? Because the Gita is not just a summary of the Vedas, right? The Vedas is very vast. The Gita is like 700 verses. You can read it in 45 minutes if you just read the Sanskrit. It is the conclusion of the Vedas. It's not just a commentary on truth. It is spoken by truth itself, which is Krishna. So even great impersonalist philosophies like Shankaracharya also said this. They also accepted the Bhagavad Gita as central. So if one is serious about knowing what the Vedas are, then you need to read the Gita. And Krishna says, I'm celebrating the Vedas as that supreme person. Let's quickly read because I'm running out of time. Yeah, let me just finish this one. So I'm just going to explain. So why is the personal greater? Well, we discussed logically, right? So logically, the impersonal is inferior to the personal. We've looked at examples. Consciousness. If we are personal, how can the source of us be impersonal? It doesn't make sense, right? Vedic scripture confirms the absolute truth is a person and the experience. If you practice Krishna consciousness, you read the Bhagavad Gita, you chant Hare Krishna, you associate with devotees, you have prasad. If you don't want the prasad, you can give it to me, no problem. All these experiences, you will feel the bliss, and it's higher than anything else. And these are just some examples I gave. All this conclusively proves that personalism is greater than impersonalism. Now, you have to, if the ultimate reality is impersonal, then how do you have, then everything you know, everything you think, everything you believe means nothing. It's just chemicals. It has no substance. It has no purpose. So therefore, you do come from a person. Just like you have a father and mother. They're not energies. They're persons. They have a mother and father. And you can keep going back. And then you'll come to Krishna. Krishna is the original person. And you can call him father, you can call him whatever, or God, whatever. But he is the absolute, and the reality is a person. Okay, I'll stop here. There's any questions or comments?
Krishna actually said that himself, because Arjuna actually asked the question, which one is more?
Yes.
Which one is more perfect?
Yes.
Saying to worship your impersonal Brahman or to worship your personal form.
Yes.
And Krishna actually said to worship my personal form is superior than worshiping the impersonal.
And it's easier to worship a form than worship.
So it came from Krishna's own
words. Yeah.
And people are still debating. I don't understand.
Prabhupada explains that for God to be complete, he must have personal and impersonal simultaneously. But the impersonal is inferior to the personal.
Right.
Right? Yes.
The subject is so deep.
Very.
We have a 12 Sunday series and still gonna miss.
Yeah. No. It's a very, actually there's a class on this I listened to. It's 8 parts. And each class is 1.5 hours. Yeah, it's a very deep topic. Even talking about the Bhagavad Gita and analyzing the verses, and talking about all the different. It's very deep, So it was quite a challenge, but I think you can understand it intuitively. We know we don't act like energy. We don't wake up one day and say, "Yeah, I'm going to call my friend." He's not a real person. He's just energy. We don't think like me and you are one. Give me your bank account, give me your card. Because we have this idea that we're different from each other. We're persons.
But it calls for a lot of inner reflection.
Well, inner reflection. I gave a talk on this a few months ago, and I talked about the ways of ascertaining knowledge. So the way we ascertain knowledge is by going for three sources: Veda, scripture, guru, and devotee. So when we're practicing bhakti yoga, these three things keep us in line, and whatever we experience, either our intuition, our experience, if it's not in line with these three things, then we know it's not correct. Okay, so we can experience many things, but if our experience is guided by these three principles while we're practicing bhakti yoga, then we know it's certain knowledge, it's authentic. Does anyone have a question? This has been a very engaging crowd, It reminds me of my year 7 kids. Anyway. No? Okay, I'll finish here. You wanted to say something?
I think the last point, it seemed more like a call to faith, because when we're exploring what is reality, someone might say this is scripture, and we know if you experience something that's against it, then it's not real.
No. Are you talking about a non-Vedic literature?
Yeah, anything. Any like even Vedic literature that's not understood correctly.
No, but you can also forget scripture. Someone may say, "My intuition tells me this is correct." You don't need scripture, isn't it? But there's a lot of things people hallucinate. You can take LSD and have a so-called spiritual experience and say that's absolute truth, isn't it? We have that, right? I met many people in London who were drugged up. They said, I'm God, or I'm this, I'm that, So what's the value of that? So therefore, we have to see it from a point of, we can use logic and reasoning to understand this, and we can see the quality of the evidence that's coming by to understand reality.
So that's our three pramanas, or three sources of evidence, are something that's directly perceived,
sense perception,
something that is logical, and then the source is
authoritative verbal
divine.
testimony. Yeah.
And then there's a certain level of perception that can be received. Like, for example, if I take psychedelic mushrooms, a person is not going to get rid of lust, greed, envy, and pride by taking it might give them some experience, but that it doesn't really have the marker of the spiritualization, because spiritualization has that effect that it reduces one's attachment to the material world, and one becomes internally satisfied.
Yeah. I'm kind of related to what you're saying. I remember like when I was about 15, 16, I used to go clubbing in the UK. I used to go to these Asian raves, and a lot of the people used to get drunk, and they said somehow they used to think they could fight like Mike Tyson, They thought they had super strength, And then you'd see one guy just slap him and they'd fall down, So it's like, drugs, all these intoxicants, they make you think what is illusion is real, So the whole point of spirituality is to be in control of your senses. So you can think with clarity, you can see truth for what it is, you can discern between illusion and truth, So first thing is, if anything is telling you to intoxicate yourself, that cannot be a form of knowing, because you know for a fact by drinking alcohol, taking drugs, you're not in control of yourself. So we need to have a way where we are conscious, and all our and we're following a process that is consistent, is it's reasonable, right? There's good reasons to believe it, and there's testimony to prove it, and the experiences we're having, we can verify it by going to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and so we're not going off track, because a lot of people do go off track. Finish here? Do you want to say something? No? Okay, I'll finish here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
So we have Hadai here. He's our resident monk, and he's going to rock us out for a tiny bit. 3-minute, 4-minute kirtan. Yeah, yeah. And then we'll serve you all a nice dinner.
And if you don't want it, you can give it to me.
Yes, yes.
Hare Krishna.